It was supposed to be a perfect day at the lake. The sun was warm, the kids were laughing, and for the first time in weeks we could finally breathe. Until she showed up. The HOA president, armed with nothing but her bottomless sense of entitlement, marched onto my property and tried to have my own family arrested for trespassing on our own land. She threatened to call the sheriff, her finger hovering over the call button. A smug, victorious look on her face, but she had no idea about the one piece of paper I had inside, the single, legal document that was about to wipe that look right off her face for good. We had dreamed of a lake house for years, a place to escape the noise, where our kids could learn to fish and our weekends could be filled with the sound of laughter. Bouncing off the water, not traffic. When we finally closed on the property at Willow Creek, it felt like we had made it. The house was a modest cabin, but it was ours. And the best part? It wasn't just near the water. Our deed included a generous private slice of the shoreline. It was our own little slice of paradise. The community was governed by an HOA, which we understood. They handled the communal docks, maintained the walking paths around the lake. It seemed reasonable. We paid our dues on time and kept to ourselves. The president of the HOA was a woman named Carol. From our first introduction, there was a chill. She spoke with the clipped, formal tone of someone who enjoyed the authority her little title granted her. She made a point to welcome us to her community, her eyes already scanning our property for any potential infractions. We smiled, nodded, and quietly hoped we'd just stay off her radar. For a few months it worked. We settled into a peaceful rhythm. But the first hint of trouble came with an official-looking letter in the mailbox. It was a notice citing a vague violation about our kayaks being stored in a non-approved manner on our own lawn. It was petty, it was nitpicky, and it carried the distinct, unmistakable signature of Carol's power trip. We corrected it, thinking it was a one-off. We had no idea it was just the opening move in a much bigger game. Her real issue wasn't with where we stored our kayaks. It was with who we were, and the fact that we owned a piece of her lake. The kayak notice was just the beginning, the first tiny crack in the dam. What followed was a relentless torrent of pettiness that threatened to drown our peace entirely. It became clear that Carol wasn't just enforcing rules. She was conducting a personal inspection of our lives, searching for any thread she could pull. The harassment evolved from letters to physical presence. We'd see Carol's golf cart, the unofficial vehicle of her reign, idling near the edge of our property line. She'd be there, sipping from a thermos, just watching, taking notes on a clipboard. My kids started calling her the Sentinel, and the name stuck. It was no longer just annoying. It was unnerving. Our sanctuary felt under surveillance. Then came the fines. $50 for the kayaks, $75 for the mat, another $100 for unapproved outdoor furniture, our classic Adirondack chairs that had been there since the previous owner. The envelopes with their crisp, official logos became objects of dread in our mailbox. We refused to pay on principle, which only escalated things. The letters turned from polite notices to stern warnings, threatening liens on our property and legal action. The climax of her campaign, the move that proved this was a vendetta, came on the first truly warm weekend of summer. My brother and his family were visiting. The kids were ecstatic, finally able to use the inflatable paddleboard we'd bought. Their laughter echoed across the water as they splashed and played along our shoreline. The joy was palpable, a perfect summer moment. And then the golf cart arrived. Carol didn't just idle this time. She marched right down our slope, her heels sinking into the soft earth. She didn't greet us. She didn't smile. She pointed a finger at my brother, who was waist-deep in the water, helping his daughter onto the paddleboard. "This is a private community lake." Her voice cut through the laughter, sharp and cold. "All guests must be registered and approved by the HOA, board 72 hours in advance. For water access, you are in violation. I need you all to exit the water immediately." The kids fell silent. My brother looked at me, confused. My wife's face was a mask of stunned disbelief. The absurdity of it was breathtaking. She was claiming dominion over the water itself. "Carol, this is my family," I said, my voice tight, trying to keep my temper in check. "They are my guests on my property. We're not using the communal dock. We're on the shoreline that belongs to this lot." She didn't even blink. The water is communal, sir. The rules are clear. Your guests are trespassing on HOA-governed property. If they do not exit, I will have no choice but to call the county sheriff for trespassing. She held up her phone as if it were a weapon. The threat hung in the air, toxic and real. She was willing to call the police on a family with small children, to create a scene of monumental embarrassment, all over a power trip. My blood ran cold, then hot. The reasonable part of me, the part that had tried to play nice at the meetings, shriveled and died. This was war, and wars are won with information. I looked at her smug, triumphant expression. She thought she had me. She thought her rulebook was the only law that mattered. "Call them," I said, my voice dangerously quiet. A flicker of surprise crossed her face. She hadn't expected that. "What?" "Call the sheriff," I repeated, holding her gaze. "But before you do, I need to go get something from the house. I suggest you wait, because what I'm about to show you changes everything. The HOA governs all water access. It's in the covenant, I know," I interrupted, my voice rising slightly now, fueled by a surge of vindication. "But your covenant cannot supersede a legally recorded deed. You can make all the rules you want for the communal docks and the common areas. But this water right here where my family is standing, this is not a common area. This is my private land." The color drained from her face. She stared at the document, her mind visibly racing, searching for a loophole, a rebuttal, anything. She found nothing. The clipboard, her symbol of power, hung uselessly at her side. The silence was absolute. The only sound was the gentle lap of water against the shore, my shore. I looked her dead in the eye, delivering the line I'd been waiting to say since this nightmare began. The line that contained all our frustration, all our anger, all our fought for peace. "So, unless you have a permit from me to be standing here," I said, my voice dropping to a near whisper that carried further than a shout ever could, "I suggest you get off my property." The clipboard slipped from her fingers and landed softly in the grass. She didn't even seem to notice. The woman who had held our happiness hostage for months, who had wielded petty authority like a cudgel, was utterly, completely defeated. She had nothing. No rules, no fines, no threats. She was just a woman who had been profoundly, publicly wrong on the very patch of earth she had tried to claim as her own. She turned without another word, walked stiffly to her golf cart, and drove away. The silence she left behind was more profound than any noise. It was a vacuum, and then it was filled with a collective exhale. The tension didn't just break, it evaporated. My brother was the first to speak, a low whistle escaping his lips. "I cannot believe that just happened." My wife's hand found mine, her grip tight, not with anxiety anymore, but with a fierce, proud energy. The kids, sensing the shift in the atmosphere, slowly crept back into the water, their laughter tentative at first, then bursting forth again, freer and louder than before. The lake was ours again, truly ours. But I knew this wasn't over. People like Carol don't just accept defeat, they regroup. They retaliate in other ways. I spent the rest of that afternoon not relaxing, but preparing. I made high-resolution copies of the deed and the surveyor's plat. I drafted a clear, concise, and unemotional email to the entire HOA board, with Carol carboned. I attached the documents and wrote a simple narrative of the event. Today, HOA President Carol, last name, attempted to accuse my family of trespassing on our own privately deeded portion of the lakefront, threatened to call law enforcement on my guests, and was verbally instructed to leave my property. To avoid any future misunderstandings, please find the legal documentation affirming our private riparian rights attached for your records. I sent it without a hint of gloating. This wasn't a victory lap. It was establishing a legal record. The response was not what I expected, but everything I had hoped for. There was no reply from Carol, not a word. But within hours, emails trickled in from other board members. They were sheepish, apologetic. "Thank you for clarifying," one wrote. "We were unaware of the specific deeded rights of Lot 14, said another. "We enjoyed that summer and every season after, with a sweetness that had been missing before. Every splash from our kids, every quiet evening watching the sunset over the water, felt earned. It was no longer just a beautiful view. It was a hard-won piece. This whole ordeal taught me a brutal but vital lesson about the world. of HOAs and petty power. These structures attract a certain type of person. Those who crave control they can't find in their own lives. They operate on the assumption that you won't fight back, that you'll pay the $75 fine to avoid the hassle, that you'll never actually read the fine print. But the fine print is everything. Your deed, your covenant, your local ordinances, these are your shields. Knowledge isn't just power. It is armor. My victory wasn't won with a loud argument at the water's edge, though that was the moment it manifested. It was 1 week earlier, in a quiet room, poring over documents until I found the one sentence. The one map, the one line that made me certain. So the next time you get that first, petty, ridiculous violation, notice the one you're tempted to just pay and don't read your documents. Know your rights. Because sometimes, the most powerful weapon against someone armed with a rule book isn't anger. It's a better rule book. And the most satisfying thing you can say to someone who tells you, "You can't do that here," is to quietly, confidently prove that you can.